My brother, Andre, my other brother, Eric, and me, of course. We're all fine. Had to let us go.
Yeah, absolutely. They had no crime. I kept asking. They would not refer to a crime. And they kept trying to get us to fall under consent of their jurisdiction, which I was not inclined to do, so I didn't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not completely confused as to why things went that way. And the cop kept saying, hey, it didn't have to go this. We didn't have to do this. I was like, you're right, officer. We didn't have to do any of this. But he would, it was kind of like a mixed bag agreement. They were just trying to force authority down our throat and undue, unjust. It was fraud, kidnapping. How many charges?
Yeah.
I counted
I was
like 4 to 5.
I was reciting the charges to the officer as he was taking me away. I was like, now you've kidnapped me. You haven't given me any crime that I've committed, actual crime that I've committed. And then, side note, they don't know the difference between battery and assault. So I learned that when I was talking to the little the commissioner at the end. He said, you've been charged with assault. I was like, who did I assault and how? He was like, well, the officer said you assaulted him. I was like, well, I thought... I was like, well, he said I grabbed him. Isn't that battery? And he was like, he just sat there for a second and looked at me. He was like, the officer charged you with assault. I was like, okay. All right. That's if you just want to go that route.
All right. So he's going to just double up? He's going to double down?
Double down, because, this hand is a losing hand, so I'll just double down on it.
Well, they're going to have a tough time fighting that kidnapping charge, because that's injury.
Yeah, they kidnapped me out of my vehicle.
They attempted to kidnap me.
I told them, you better not, if you steal my property, that's the property. And I was like, wow, that's really going to be a charge right there.
Oh, yeah.
So
they're under the assumption that colorful law is law, and I tried to make sure they understood that, but they were just kind of under the position of saying, hey, our ignorance is pretty much absolvement from,
Well, the courts have said their ignorance is absolvement, but it's not the state's absolvement. So we still have a court case against the state. We can't file against the troopers per se because the Supreme Court has said that. But that's under statutory law. That's statutory. That has nothing to do with our common stuff, our common law stuff. So we still can file charges against them, which is the great part. And I was telling them too all the time. And I just kept talking. You know what the officer did? He assaulted me with this noise of pollution in the car, and just turned it up very, very loud so he could not hear me speaking anymore. He just hit me with noise pollution, and I was quite offended by it. And then, and then I couldn't get put in the car properly. So what he did, he just kind of shoved the door against my leg and slammed my leg into the door. So assaulted me. Excuse me. There was battery and injury against me on that point. So also.
Yeah. I was definitely negligently assaulted. He wasn't actually attempting to assault me because at the time they knew they put the cuffs on me super light because they wanted to reassure me that I wasn't being arrested. They were trying to negotiate some other terms with me, which is why they took me around the corner. They didn't want me in contact with you. I was like, let me speak to the owner of the property, and they would not allow me. And he was like, oh well, he's been taken. That's when they went on to tell me that you had been arrested, and I was like, whoa, so you mean kidnapped? And, oh yeah, I paid. Call up and
Number 10.
My wife. Yeah, she's upset because she had to come very early in the morning to come get me.
Have you paid?
I haven't bought anything.
Do you want anything?
No, I'm good.
Sure?
Yeah, I have chicken tenders at the house and stuff.
Okay, they will pay.
Yes, they will. And here is my other brother who just sat in the car and was like, I'm good.
Which is interesting. He's got the most interesting
Notice I'm white, and I was not accosted or pulled out of the vehicle. And when they asked me for my ID and I told them I didn't have one, they left me alone.
At that point, they ceased to deal with him entirely.
Yeah. When one cop tried to reach across and remove Andre's seatbelt, and I looked him in the eye and told him he was wrong, and he knew he was wrong, he stopped what he was doing. Unfortunately, the other cops weren't so thoughtful.
Yeah.
But yeah.
At the point they had me in a chokehold.
Unfortunately.
Hey, that's great because you have a witness to the crime.
Of all
the
you were
crimes.
Recording when they were taking me out of the car.
Yeah,
right?
I recorded everything.
So I'm glad you could see that chokehold that I was in because that was
That's a legal
chokehold.
chokehold. Yeah, legal chokehold. Yeah, that was assault. So we have
battery.
Excuse me. Yes, we have battery charges against the police department. It's going to be a very lengthy statements being made. I'm thinking at least $250,000 per person in this case. We will be doing documentation shortly. We already have it written up, which is the funny thing, because I always have the documentation already written up because I keep getting in situations like this. Funny enough.
You know, it's interesting because one cop went on to say, had you just had your name and date of birth on the blah, he wouldn't have to circumvent the presentation of an ID, which actually wasn't necessary.
Well, he didn't necessarily say that. He said it might have made things smoother.
That was his theory, actually, if you want to use
So by doing something illegal to help them out, it would have helped me in the long run, which I don't understand how doing something illegal ever helps the person in the long run. So,
well, yeah, I'm not going to contest that. But it's all about trying to infringe on your legalities and rights.
oh, and the magistrate, well, the commissioner, from what I can gather, he has no legal standing whatsoever, because he said he couldn't really do anything as far as the court case was concerned. There was no witnesses present at the time. Well, court, they allowed at some point, they did allow court to come in, and I told him at that point in time when she did show up that this was my special magistrate. This is my special magistrate. She will be speaking for me. You can't do that. You can't have her speak for you.
What?
I was like, so
wait a minute, you can't appoint your own counsel? Is that what they tried to tell you?
Yes, basically, I can't appoint her as a special magistrate.
So
Basically, my own counsel, which it means in
practices.
legal terms. He didn't no legal definition. Cause he asked me, do I want a lawyer or do I want a state-appointed counsel from the what is it called, public defender?
Like
yeah. and then he was like, or do you want to represent He said, do you want to represent yourself? I said, pro se. He was like, I don't know what that means.
Well, you know what I also
How are you a
funny
judge and
was
don't know what pro se means?
When you brought up your address, and you kind of was real like, are you sure you're gonna be staying here in this many months? Like you were gonna get kicked out of your house or something? Like you could afford to have a place to live? Like you're a vagrant or something, I guess.
He was funny. And when he said he did not know what pro se meant, I was like, wow. I actually literally told him, well, so to make it clear to you, since you do not understand the word, pro se means myself. I will be representing myself. So I thought that was pretty funny that you, as a commissioner, you do not even know the legal definition necessary to do your job. That shows a lack of intelligence, a lack of training by the department, it's a lack of training by the State Department. As
shows gross negligence.
Gross negligence. Shows a lot of stuff about how they actually run the court system over here. And I have the Inspector General, the IG's number, and I will be contacting him along with a head of a terrorist task force for the United States, who is one of my friends. So we will. It's going to be a very lengthy,
and I'm sure this has been
fun
discussed,
battle.
but when asked for ID, identification, badge number, they did not present said badge number. They did not say their names. They physically assaulted Andre Grant. That is what they did.
Oh, and then when
Leroy Robinson Grant afterwards.
And then after we request the sergeant on duty to come, they have to present a sergeant on duty. They refused. And when I went to this precinct to actually talk to the sergeant on duty, he happened to be a Marine. He was like, I can't go to every situation because I run 3 departments, and how am I supposed to do that? And I was like, well, you're not called out to every situation, are you? He was like, no. I was like, so this is a special case, correct?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I just can't do it. How am I supposed to physically do that? I was like, well, that's not my decision. That's your job to figure that out. When you're called out to go to a scene,
when a supervisor
requested, you show up. It's your job to show up. But I mean, that's not the way to do things. Like I've been told by the other judge, that maybe you're right, but that's not the way we do things over here. So, everybody's safe. Everybody's cool.
As can be.
Yeah,
given the circumstances.
given circumstances.
Relatively, I'm jarred.
Thank
of course.
God
Relatively,
things weren't
I was
worse
stressed out
because
about
they
this.
could have been much worse.
It could have been much worse, but
Anytime a black man gets put into the back of a car, taken into the dark of night.
I'm just mad they wouldn't cite a charge. I kept asking. I was like, what is this in relation to? What's the crime? Because I asked him about being detained. I was like, yes, in relation to what? Never got an answer. Not once.
this is your Maryland State Department Justice System. Enjoy. I did.
Oh, did you see the note? I gotta show you this. It's probably an almost now, but
You good, man?